All ready for our fan-favorite case for the Mystery Files. It is Dylatov Pass.
Dylatov Pass.
And I hope I'm saying that correct, but I've always said it that way, so I hope it's correct. Yeah, Dylatov Pass.
Dial up pass.
Dylatov Pass.
Dial up pass.
Dial up.
Wow.
Cool beans. But yeah, for this case, Logan and I are going to be rolling off each other. I'll say a little, Logan's going to say a little, and we're just going to go back and forth.
We're going to switch off. I don't think we've ever switched off before.
I know, it's going to be different little vibes. So we hope you guys enjoy this one. This one's for you. This is all for you. Love you the most. And let's get rolling. So, in January of 1959, in Russia, 9 Soviet college students died under mysterious circumstances while hiking through the Ural Mountains in what's now known as Dylatov Pass incident. On January 31st, 1959, a 23-year-old ski hiker named Igor Dylatov embarked on a journey to reach the peak of Orotin, a mountain in the northern Urals. The Soviet college student brought a team of 8 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute along with him on the adventure. Before he left, Dylatov had told his sports club that he and the team would send them a telegram as soon as they returned, but none of the hikers were ever seen alive again.
It is so scary.
It's ominous.
It, reminds me, right off the bat, I don't know if I originally thought this when we did this case. I probably did, but, it gives me Until Dawn vibes in that, video game. And I know I've talked about that before with Wendigos, but kind of the idea of just, going up in the mountains and not returning.
Just disappearing.
So, the hikers enter Dylatov. From what was recovered from cameras and diaries discovered at the site of their deaths, investigators were able to piece together that on February 1st, the hiking team began to make their way through the then unnamed pass leading to Otorten. As they pushed through the hostile climate towards the base of the mountain, they were hit with the snowstorms that ripped through the narrow pass. Decreasing visibility caused the team to lose their sense of direction, and instead of moving towards Otorten, they accidentally deviated west and found themselves on the slope of a nearby mountain. This mountain that is nicknamed Dead Mountain by the indigenous Mansi people of the region. To avoid losing the altitude they had gained, or perhaps simply because the team wanted to practice camping on a mountain slope before their ascent of Otorten, Dylatov called for camp to be made there. It was on this solitary mountainside that all 9 hikers would meet their demise.
Ooh.
This is really well written.
It is. Thank you.
The articles with it, wow.
Hey.
You did such a good job back then. Look at you.
Thank you. Wow, back then.
That sounded so shady.
Wow, you were really good back then. What the heck happened?
Wait, hold on. I meant you were even good back then. There we go.
Wow, you were really good back then. What happened? Ew. I mean, for the record, I wish I had the name of this article. It probably was just from an article.
Yeah.
To be fair. So
you're a plagiarist.
So I'm a plagiarizer. Yeah.
So when February 20th rolled around and there was still no communication from the ski hikers, a search party was mounted. The volunteer rescue force that trekked through the Dylatov Pass found the campsite but no hikers, so Army and police investigators were sent in to determine what had happened to the missing students. When they arrived on the mountain, the investigators weren't hopeful. Though the students were experienced hikers, the route they had chosen was remarkably difficult, and accidents on tricky mountain trails are not unheard of. With so many days gone, they expected to find bodies and sad but uncomplicated answers. They were only partially correct. The bodies they found, yet the state in which they found them in only raised more questions. Their discovery would open a mystery that continues to this day.
Burm, burm, burm.
Let's see. I already, though, off the bat, I'm remembering this case already. I'm it's coming back to my head of how they found them. So, when investigators arrived at the campsite, the first thing they noticed was that the tent had been cut open from the inside, and most of the team's belongings, including several pairs of shoes, had been left there. Yep, this is coming back to me.
I'm remembering it too.
Oh my gosh. They then discovered 8 or 9 sets of footprints from the team, many of them clearly made by people with either nothing, socks, or a single shoe on their feet.
Ew.
These tracks led to the edge of the nearby woods, almost a mile away from the camp. That's crazy.
That's
a mile
creepy.
away.
Yeah.
That's kind of far, especially up in the mountainsides. Oh my gosh.
Tracks with one shoe.
Mm-hmm.
Or no shoes.
Or no shoes or no socks either. Like they saw barefoot ones also. At the forest edge under a large cedar, the investigators found the remains of a small fire and the first two bodies. Yuri Krivenchenko, 23, and Yuri Durashenko, 21. Despite temperatures of -13 to -22 Fahrenheit on the night of their deaths, both men's bodies were found shoeless and wearing only underwear. They then found the next three bodies, those of Dylatov, Zenata Kolmogorova, 24, and Rustem Slobodin, 23, who died on their way back to the camp from the cedar tree. While the circumstances were odd, the cause of death was clear. All the students had perished from hypothermia. Their bodies showed no indication of several external damage beyond what had been inflicted by the cold, though. It wasn't until the four bodies were found 2 months later that the mystery continued to deepen.
Ooh. First off, I want to just say you did an amazing job of pronouncing those names, and I'm sure you did a much better job than I did when
you first did it.
When I first did this case, and even when I first started reading this, I completely skipped that guy's middle name, the Dylatov guy,
really?
Because his name was too long, and I was I'm gonna butcher it. But you did great.
Thank you.
I hear you.
I've tried with it.
But yes, that's
I love
crazy.
What is it? Whenever I get into because we haven't done as much true crime in the past, how we have been before. So getting that tone set up and having those moments is really interesting.
It's nice to get back into a different realm of mystery, and this one's definitely it gets deeper. There was an even grislier scene at Dylatov Pass. So the remaining students were discovered buried under the snow in a ravine 75 meters down, deeper into the woods than the cedar, and their bodies told dramatically different stories than those of the other members of the group. 3 of the 6 ski hikers had fatal injuries, including Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, 23, who had suffered significant skull damage in the moments before his death, Ludmila Dubinina, 20, and Semyon Zolorychov, 38, had major chest fractures that could only be caused by an immense force, comparable to that of a car crash. In the most gruesome part of the Dylatov Pass incident, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, parts of her lips, as well as facial tissue and fragment of her skull bone. They found the body of Alexander Kolatov, 24, in the same location but without the severe wounds. The second group of bodies suggested that the hikers had died at distinctly different times. They appeared to have been making use of the clothes of the people who died before them. Dubinina's foot was wrapped in a piece of Krivonishenko's wool pants, and Zolorychov was found in Dubinina's faux fur coat and hat, suggesting he had taken them from her after she had died, just as he had taken from Krivonishenko. The mysterious circumstances at Dylatov Pass incident beg for an explanation, and many theories have been put forward.
See, that's the crazy thing. I'm glad we're taking a second, before we jump into the theories, because I remember a couple of them from when we originally did this a few years ago.
Yeah.
I'm remembering how, crazy it was, because this is just, there's so many things that don't make sense or add up the way they should, that it's just, very weird that, originally they were oh, it was hypothermia, it was this, it was that, but then just, finding, their bodies like that, it's, where does that come from?
Yeah.
There's so many missing elements to it.
And it's just creepy. There's elements of them wearing different people's clothes and how Dubinina, her whole body was messed with. You know what I mean?
It's how did it get to that point?
Yeah, what went on? This is pretty dark.
Yeah, but I remember a lot of these theories are pretty good. So I'm gonna hop into it. So for the theories, there are over 60 known theories of what transpired during the blizzard. What the science tells us for sure is that the 9 skiers could not have sustained their injuries from any object found in the vicinity, which will take us to theory 1, ambush. Early on, many Soviets suspected that the students' deaths were the result of an ambush by the local Mansi tribesmen. It revolves around a sacred cave of the local Mansi tribe, which they use for ritual sacrifice. The
Ew.
tribe apparently does not like to share the mountain with outsiders, and when the Dylatov group allegedly robbed their sacrificial cave of its various items, hunted them down in the night, and killed them. A sudden attack would account for the way the hikers fled their tents, their disarray, and the damage done to the second group of bodies. But that explanation fizzles out quickly because the Mansi people were largely peaceful, and the evidence of the Dylatov Pass didn't support violent human conflict. For one, the damage done to the students' bodies exceeded the blunt force trauma one human could inflict on another. There was also no evidence of any footprints on the mountain beyond those made by the hikers themselves.
Oh.
That's like a very like interesting one because I just feel I know they kind of disregarded it already, like, hey, this is probably not what happened, but this is a
Yeah.
theory. Um, it just feels like a little too like movie film like to me. Like I
Yeah.
just don't see a bunch of like college age kids like robbing like a random cave
Cave.
in the mountainside.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Also, like the fact that it was literally like, yeah, this is blunt force that like one human, there's no
Right.
way a human could do this to another human.
Right, which is where the theories get really eerie with
They
that
get muddied.
too. Yeah.
But yes, now we're on to theory number 2, which is that this was all from an avalanche. So
Mhm.
investigators then conceived of a swift, violent avalanche. The sound of snow collapsing, an early warning of the deluge to come, would have frightened the hikers out of their tents in a state of undress and sent them sprinting for the tree line. An avalanche would also have been powerful enough to inflict the injuries that killed the second group of students. Would the experienced hikers have made camp in a spot that was vulnerable to an avalanche? Then, too, there was the fact that the investigators found the bodies. They noted no evidence that an avalanche had occurred any time recently in the region. There was no damage to the tree line, and searchers observed no debris. No avalanches have been recorded at that site before, and nor have there been any since. The avalanche hypothesis was characteristic of most of the theories put forward in the early days of the mystery. It offered an incisive solution to some aspects of the puzzle, but utterly failed to account for others. So,
That's where with that theory, I feel like that one could be true, but I think it's only partially true.
yeah.
Like, there's no way like an avalanche did like what happened to like those bodies, just like the dismemberment and like the exchanging of clothes and everything.
Yeah.
Like even if the avalanche took them out, something transpired before the avalanche or even after.
Yeah.
Like so, there's still more to the story than just an avalanche just went through them.
Yeah, because why would there not have been any proof of an avalanche? And like, I guess you could argue like maybe there was some sort of avalanche, but the snow melted.
Right.
But there would still be some sort of debris. Like there'd be like sticks or rocks or trees that got caught in it.
Scientists are very good at finding that information.
Yeah, so that's a pretty loose theory. I mean, I guess it would make sense for as far as the clothes, like if they were to accidentally grab someone else's clothes, but for all of them to just not grab their own, all of them, it's a little weird. A little weird.
Which I think leads me, to the third theory, which I think is like, from what I remember, one I think could have been a possibility. So, theory 3 is hallucination. Others argue that the chaotic and violent deaths could have been the result of a strong and toxic moonshine-type beverage the group had procured from the local hunters, possibly also used ritualistically. The stuff could easily have caused psychedelic hallucinations, it is believed. This would have accounted for the haphazard escape and the group's apparently inexplicable behavior. There is still the fact of the tent ripped from the side, as well as the absence of any footprints outside the tent that did not belong to the members of the Dylatov group. It really does appear that the group had shot out of the tent, running in different directions. The mystery of what really happened still seems to persist, though. So, like, yeah, they're thinking it's, like, drugs. I'm not saying that it is drugs or, like, I'm, like, fully on board with that, but I think, some of the stuff that may have happened, if you're that disoriented, there is a possibility, like, things can happen. Like, depending on, like, what it was, too. Like, it could really, like, mess with you, especially, like, in a high environment like that. Something just so I don't want to say emotionally charged, but like I guess the idea of like we need to survive, and if you're already on like a
Yeah.
psychedelic, it's like that anxiety will just be increased by like thousands.
Yeah, like I feel like if they're in the middle of nowhere and they would have some sort of drug or alcohol effect that caused them to hallucinate, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like they definitely could get to a point of like some sort of psychotic break. But I guess it would have to be something strong enough that would make all of them feel this way
Yeah.
to like act crazy enough to like
Yeah.
be
They all
killing
had
each
to have
other.
been on that like strong enough for it. That's a
Yeah.
good point too.
I don't know. All of them had to
Yeah.
have been to a weird enough place that they decided this was a way for them to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I guess I did forget about the part where like the tent was literally ripped from the inside. So it begs the question,
So
why was it
wild.
ripped from the
Why
inside?
was it ripped?
It had to
Yeah.
be one of them.
Oh,
Weird. Weird,
it
weird,
just
weird.
feels so creepy and creaturistic.
Yeah.
Oh my
Unless
gosh.
one of them was trying to escape the tent themselves
Yeah.
because they're threatened by someone else, but they don't want to like
Mm.
unzip the tent. So they're like, I'm gonna break out and
Right.
cut the tent. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But our next theory is that the deaths were caused by a radioactive weapon. So, other sleuths point to reports that small amounts of radiation were detected on the bodies, leading to wild theories that the students who had been killed by some sort of secret radioactive weapon. Those who favor this idea stress the strange appearance of the bodies at their funerals. The corpses had a slight orange, withered cast, but had radiation been the cause of death? More than modest levels would have registered when the bodies were examined. The corpse's orange hue isn't surprising given the frigid conditions in which they lay. They had partially mummified in the cold. For many, the possibility of a mysterious military weapon is too intriguing to resist. Some say the ski hiking team was unfortunate enough to stumble into the USSR testing a concussive weapon, or perhaps a parachute mine exercise. This explanation is a popular one because it is partially supported by the testimony of another hiking group, one camping only 50 kilometers from the Dylatov Pass team on the same night. This other group spoke of strange orange orbs, floating in the sky around Kolet's cycle. A slight proponent of this theory interprets as distant explosives. The hypothesis goes that the sound of the concussions drove the hikers from their tents in a panic. Half clothed, the first group died of hypothermia while attempting to take shelter from the blast by waiting near the tree line. The second group, having seeing the first group freeze, determined to go back for their belongings but fell victim to hypothermia too, while the third group got caught in a fresh blast further into the forest and died from their injuries. Lev Inilov, the chief investigator of the Dylatov Pass incident, said, quote, I suspected at the time, and am almost sure now, that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to the group's death, when interviewed by a small Kazakh newspaper in 1990. So, that one is definitely an interesting
Wild.
take. I feel like it's
Yeah.
closer, but it's still...
It accounts for more events for sure.
It accounts for more. But I feel like I don't know how much like the blast would have caused some of those injuries, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and it didn't it say like there wasn't a lot. I think I remember this from when we first did it. There wasn't a lot of evidence to prove that there was even a radioactive blast, right?
Yeah, I
like-
feel like there wasn't a ton of evidence. I'm also confused because this other group that was there, if they were also seeing this, why didn't they die? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like how did they make it out okay?
Yeah, and the thing is that these people would have ran and got hypothermia or whatever. Couldn't they have just run back to their tent
Yeah.
and gotten warm? Like, unless this was happening, these people were running, and like, say they got caught by some like military people,
Right.
and the military people were killing them because they were figuring out their secrets. I guess then I could be like, okay, this seems like a
But
just
then
theory.
footprints, how do they like hide those?
Yeah.
Why are their footprints there but the other ones aren't? It's like
Yeah, why are they still cutting through their tent?
Yeah, it's like every single theory has like a loophole in it. It's just kind of like
Yeah.
you have to kind of just it's so wild.
Yeah, maybe these other people did it.
Yeah.
The other people that are seeing that were staying there the same night.
Mhm.
It's all a little sketch, but that's
Yeah.
that's that theory.
And then for theory number 5, this is the big one that they always come back to. I remember this from last time too. Is like they were like, this is so simple that it's like, ugh.
It's like, here we go.
I guess you're right. Maybe.
Yeah.
But so theory 5 is that it was hypothermia. So some try to explain the hiker's strange behavior and lack of clothing with an in-depth look at the effects of hypothermia. Irrationality is a common early sign of hypothermia, and as a victim approaches death, they may paradoxically perceive themselves to be overheating, resulting in removed clothes. The trauma to the second group of bodies in this version of events is caused by a stumbling plunge over the edge of a ravine. Yet hypothermia doesn't explain why the hikers left their warm tents in a panic for the frigid world outside in the first place. So this is what we talked about. I think it's not a theory, but I think creature, like there was something in those mountains, in that area.
Yeah.
And they had to run from it, which
They
could
had to
account for
escape
the
it.
hypothermia, but like still though.
I feel like it had to be something else mixed with hypothermia. Like, yes, I'm positive they got hypothermia because obviously they froze.
Because they also,
dead.
the scientists said that too, is that like it was proven that 4 of the bodies had died from hypothermia.
Yeah, but like there has to be more than that. Those other people were staying in the woods too. Like, why didn't they get hypothermia? It's just it's a little too easy for me. You know, I think there's more to the story.
Yeah.
But now we're gonna get on to the last theory, theory number 6, which is infrared sound. So this theory is that a repetitive wind event very likely produced an infrasound phenomenon, which caused erratic behavior among the ill-fated campers. It is believed that the landscape along what became known as Dylatov Pass could produce the proposed infrasound anomaly. There are environmental factors that can contribute to humans sensing infrasound, which includes sound pressure. Even when infrasound level tones cannot be heard, it is believed that the effects nonetheless be felt as vibrations within the body. This explanation implies that the sound waves were too low to hear, and they could have subtly affected the minds of the skiers, panicking them and causing them to rush recklessly into the snow, where the cold killed them. So...
that one's just a little... I don't know.
Maybe.
What?
I don't know.
What are you talking about? Just a little bit.
I feel like of those theories that I'm thinking, I feel like the likely things that I think went on here, like if we were to mix what you were talking about with the creature in the woods, possibly, I'm thinking they were on some sort of substance, whether that be like a moonshine that was like really very high in alcohol content, or like they were on some sort of hallucinogenic drug that made them all like kind of lose their mind and turn against each other.
Like,
and
what if they felt sick and that's why they left in the first place? Like they felt sick or like contained in the tent, like I need to get out.
Yeah, like I feel like they were all just kind of going stir crazy because they were hopped up on some sort of thing. Maybe they heard a sound in the woods and were like freaking out. Maybe they turned against each other, and maybe it was a mix of hypothermia. They started tearing their clothes off because they thought they were hot. Maybe it was a mixture of like they're on the drugs and they think their clothes are too hot. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like it could be a mix of all sorts of things, but I feel like either way this whole story is strange, and it's just strange that all of them went crazy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think I remember when we did this during the radio show, I think you and I's conclusion, and I don't know if you still agree with this, but I think I do, is that I think it could be a mixture of like a lot of these theories. I think there's a little bit of truth in all of them that you can pull to kind of make that story. So if you pull like theories from like each one and kind of try to streamline that, you might get the answer that actually might have happened on that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to know the truth though.
Yeah.
But I know like the fun of all these, like, they're a mystery.
I now remember now why this was like a fan favorite, because it's just very mysterious. Like you and I were both even like I don't know. Well, it's wild.
I feel like there's just elements of it. Like there's, how do you explain it? Like I don't understand why there were footprints that weren't theirs outside the tent.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it was ripped from the inside. I don't understand what happened to that girl.
Yeah.
Why were there 3 different groups? There's just a lot that's left unknown. And even all these different theories still don't account for big parts of it. And like they all kind of contradict one another. It's so hard.
It's really hard.